This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
We're coming into the inn. The inn is this home for the boys, right? It's the hub of the town. It's the hub of everything they know. It's where everyone meets. They're all sitting around playing stones.
Yeah, you can see that it's a really casual space when they talk about it, and the way that there seems to be free food for everyone all the time.
I assume they pay for her cooking, though. Kind of like a restaurant.
Yeah, but I mean, she gives biscuits to the kids and stuff all the time.
Right. And I bet, there's just not much money that changes hands. It's probably all favors and farmers dropping things off. And I bet it's a lot of barter.
That's true. I'm pointing out that Rand and Matt are getting beverages and food for free, but Tam just dropped off 8 barrels of apple cider and a cask of brandy, which is quite a bit.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And he seems to do this every year, so they probably have some sort of arrangement. I never really thought about that either. Interesting.
Yeah, I imagine he keeps a tally as a innkeeper and keeps track of what's been dropped off and what's been taken. If anybody's a bank, the mayor is probably keeping track of who owes what.
If those are small barrels, that's 200 gallons of apple cider. It's a lot.
Yeah, that's a fun festival. Okay, so here we have Moiraine's introduction, right? This is where she sort of steps in. She's the element of change that really takes this story from, a normal everyday, these are farm boys having fun, to, hey, something's going on here. We've got strangers.
Yeah. We see Matt and Rand right at the beginning of the book unloading those barrels and casks, like I mentioned, of Tam's homemade booze in the basement of the inn. And then this little kid who's a couple years younger, I think he's around 14 or so, comes running down the stairs to inform Matt and Rand, who are unloading those, that there are strangers in town. And one's a lady wearing fancy clothes and the other one appears to be a warder. But Matt doesn't believe it because he's not wearing any gold or jewels at all.
I think he just says he could be a warder, and they're like, yeah, right. No, there's no way a warder would come here.
That's exactly what he says.
And we see that Moiraine, she comes in just decked to the nines. She's got her ring on, declaring her an Aes Sedai for anyone to see. She's in super fancy clothes.
Yeah, I was really curious about this, and we were talking about this a little before we started recording, and yeah, we see Moiraine wearing the Aes Sedai serpent ring. She's wearing the little pendant deal that hangs across her forehead.
The blue stone?
Yeah, the blue stone that hangs on her forehead. And she's wearing the blue and white slashed clothing. I never knew exactly what that would look like, but it's an indication of her rank as a Cairhienin noble when she wears that clothing.
I didn't know that, yeah.
Yeah, you'll see it later with the other nobles. They say the amount of slashes that go across their clothing is their rank. So she's wearing a blue dress and it has however many white slashes. It's mentioned somewhere later, but it's 3 or 4 and it goes up to 7 or something like that. Right.
Well, isn't she pretty high ranked? She's
she's high up there.
Cousin of the king or something like that, right?
Yeah, I don't know if Cairhien has female monarchs, but if they did, she would be I don't know, 10 in line from the throne or something like that. Like close, but not that close.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. She renounced all that when she became Aes Sedai.
Right. I think you have to.
Oh yeah, definitely. You renounce all claim to your homeland, which not everyone's good at. But yeah. One of the things that I find fascinating is the interaction between Moiraine and the Aiel. Because they see her both as Aes Sedai and Cairhienin.
Oh.
I think they're able to overlook the Cairhienin, but they're able to do that because she is Aes Sedai.
Do they know that she's Cairhienin?
Yeah, totally. She has the same last name as the king. They're not.
True. Yeah.
No, and she's short, she looks Cairhienin. She's definitely doesn't hide it in any way. And I think she talks about it at one point.
Yeah, I think amongst the Aiel, she doesn't attempt to hide her identity, which Going back to what we were just saying is what I was going to say before. She's using her real name. So not only is she dressed as exactly who she is, she's using her real name, which is not typical for like the next couple of books. We see her using her real name in public very rarely. And I was a little curious why, I guess.
I mean, I think it's because she is walking in to meet the Dragon Reborn, and she knows it. And she wants, A, to be as honest with him as possible. You know, that's a sense of trust. She's telling him her real name. She's showing him her real rank. And she's displaying that she's an Aes Sedai. You know, she might be a little nervous, right? She's been on this quest for 20 years to find the Dragon Reborn. And she finally knows he's in this town. She's going to find him here. And he's one of these 3 boys who were born around the right time. You know, she's talked to Nynaeve, and I want to talk about that scene a little bit, and knows who's there and who the boys are and what their names are. She knows these 3 boys, and she knows one of them is the Dragon Reborn.
Right.
And I think as soon as she sees Rand, she suspects it's him.
I'll just start reading and see what you want to use. Moiraine looked from him to Mat and back again. Rand thought her smile, a bare curve of the corner of her mouth, was the sort that a Green wore when she had a secret. And then she starts giving them the coins. This smirk is either because she looks at Mat, she looks at Rand, and then she goes, "It's you.
Mm-hmm.
It's clearly you." Or she's preparing compulsion right now, or both. Clearly, later, she uses compulsion on them in this scene right here.
Yeah, I think we've talked about that, I think, before.
No, it's obvious once I reread this.
Yeah.
She says, "There is a bond between us now," which is like really plain spoken for an Aes Sedai.
I think it's definitely a link. I'm not sure it escalates to the point of compulsion, but there's something in them that makes them want to not give the coin away. They want to hang on to the coin. She definitely implants that idea in their head. And I don't know if you'd call that compulsion, but we look at how she hands each coin to the character. When she gives it to Mat and Rand, she carefully wraps their hand around it, holds their hand for a second, and then lets them go. And I think in that point, she's channeling. Whereas when she gives it to the younger boy, Ewan, she simply hands it to him. Like it's, oh yeah, here's a coin.
Right.
And the boys comment on it because they say, "Oh no, we think she gave it to you to spend."
"What kind of chores does she have?" Rand asked finally. "I don't know," Mat said firmly, "and I don't care. I won't spend it either." This is Mat's suggestion, by the way. He's the first one to say that he's not going to spend the money.
That's not natural.
Nope.
That's not natural.
"I don't know," Mat said firmly, "and I don't care. I won't spend it either. Not even when the peddler comes." With that, he thrust the coin into his pocket. Nodding, Rand slowly did the same with his. He was not sure why, but somehow what Mat said seemed right. The coin should not be spent, not when it came from her. He could not think of anything else the silver was good for, but... And then Ewan says, "Well, what about me?" And they're like, "No, you should probably just spend yours." They seem to... There's some kind of charm happening. It's a low form of compulsion, I guess is what you would call this.
Yeah.
It's not a malicious type, but...
No, we see various gray versions of compulsion, from what Varen does to open people to suggestion, to the various tricks that... they talk about that young women, wilders, often come up with one of 2 tricks. Either listening in on people or making daddy do what you want.
Right.
And buying you stuff. And that's a little bit of compulsion. And they really try and beat that compulsion out of the novices, literally. But I don't think it's too far of a stretch to say Moiraine, who certainly has the listening trick with the blue stone, we get that explicitly, may also have a bit of that making people do what she wants. Even if it's just hold on to this coin.
Oh, yeah. I mean, she has a listening trick also, but she's a full Aes Sedai. There's no reason she wouldn't have some of these low bits of compulsion.
Varen certainly is able to assemble a lot of them.
Yeah, and it's hardly, it really is hardly compulsion. She gives them this coin, and she gives them this sureness about what they should do with it.
Right.
That's all that she actually does.
Still, it's just a stark contrast to see the 2 boys, especially Mat, wanting to save the coin.
For no other reason than as a keepsake?
Right.
Come on.
No, Matt's going to go buy something, following his natural inclination. Later on, what clued me in is at the end of this book, Moiraine says to Rand, you should have fallen in with whatever I wanted, especially after I gave you that coin. Well, what? Well, the only way that would make any sense is if at that point she had cast some form of compulsion on the boys. And you see it right there where he's saying he didn't know why. He was reluctantly putting it in his pocket, and he didn't know why, because it didn't make sense to his own head, and he was resisting, which she states that he was more stubborn than she expected.
That's true.
It's one of the few times where she actually describes something that happened in the past is this scene. And so going back and listening to her description and then reading the scene is a great way to see what happened from her perspective. And her perspective was, hey, I gave him this coin. The boy should do what I want. But this one's not doing it very well. Maybe he's got some sort of ability to channel that's resisting it.
Moments where Rand may have channeled already.
I don't think we've gotten to that yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that might be an interesting segue, if only because I'm not even sure. So if you have some theories, but I mean, he's at the age where he should either start now or have started. I don't think that people with the gift, who haven't used it yet, get any of like the abilities. Like, does a person who can only be taught to channel, like they wouldn't have the ageless look.
Right. I think, you do have to touch the source before you get any of the agelessness, sensing dark.
Other benefits.
Yeah, sensing shadow spawn, living longer, all of those benefits that you get. I feel like even if you can touch the true source, don't take effect until you actually channel it.
Yeah, and that would make sense. Even right there, what we were just talking about, we see Matt is certain about what he needs to be doing with that coin, and Rand's like, okay, yeah.
I don't think he's channeled at this point.
I don't think we know.
I think his first time channeling is on Winter Night when they're fleeing, and he helps Bella.
Oh, that's a theory too, right? He helps Bella.
No, Moiraine says that explicitly at the end of the book.
Well, doesn't she only say something along the lines of,
she says, when I went to cleanse Bella's tiredness and she didn't need it, I suspected. I should have known who was riding the horse, Egwene. And I should have remembered who cared about her the most, and that was you.
Oh.
And so,
but we know Egwene hasn't channeled yet. Well, she gets the full walkthrough.
Moiraine would have known that. She would have sensed it.
Oh, right, yeah.
So she had to know it was a male channeling.
Or she would have felt it while it was happening.
Exactly.
Or Bella's a hero of the Horn.
Bella's the creator. We did skip over one little bit, which is when they describe Moiraine meeting Nynaeve. Which is described, you don't see it. You just hear about it in passing. And so it's very easy to miss on your first read through. But I think as a first encounter between two of our major characters, it is, one, hilarious, and two, sort of sets the tone for everything that happens afterwards between the two of them.
Oh, yeah.
Moiraine walks up to Nynaeve, prickly Nynaeve, who has been slowed by the one power. So even though she's 26, she looks 19. And everyone thinks she's way younger than she is.
Yeah. But she's still too young to really have a position in the village. That's just the other women see her real talent.
Oh, sure. Yeah, she can channel.
Yeah.
And she's able to actually
she can
heal.
Literally listen to the wind.
Moiraine walks by her, senses that this woman can channel, knows she's not Aes Sedai, and so instinctively says, child, like she would to any novice, and says, excuse me, child.
And Nynaeve starts pulling her knife out. What did you call me?
Yeah, exactly. I am the wisdom. But that's because Nynaeve can channel, right? Like, that's why she calls her a child. It's not disrespectful. It's what she would call
and
a novice.
And what she would call a lot of people.
Well, yeah.
In regular Aes Sedai form, which she kind of isn't right now, but I see what you're getting at.
Right.
Why she would, like, immediately defer to that title for her. Right. Because that's what novices are called.
Right. And I think Nynaeve takes that in a very different way. Moiraine says it as, excuse me, child, you are a novice. And Nynaeve takes it as, excuse me, child, you are a little girl.
Yeah, right.
You know, and there's that fundamental misunderstanding right there. It sets them off on each other. And then to smooth it over, what does Moiraine do? She starts asking questions about everyone in the village.
I think she asked Nynaeve a lot of questions about herbs first, which I am pretty sure is not one of Moraine's interests.
No.
Which she's soothing Nynaeve to be like, oh, right, you do know tons of stuff.
Totally. Yeah. No, you're a great wisdom. And then asks about the birth dates and places of the villagers. She immediately starts looking for the Dragon Reborn.
Yeah. Ewan mentions that she's been asking lots and lots of questions. So many that people are noticing. And a little confused about what she could possibly care about that happens here.
Yeah, but I mean, they sort of take it as like, well, it's just an outsider lady being a little crazy and like asking random questions. I think they buy her story about looking for stories. She's in there looking for which of your village folk were born out of the two rivers and which ones were born around this very specific time.
She knows the year, date, and she knows the moment that the Dragon Reborn was born.
Right, because it's at the moment of that prophecy.
The year, day, and hour.
And location. Anyone who was born in the two rivers, and Nynaeve was there for a lot of their births.
Right.
Or at least knows about it. But because she's around 9-10 years older than the boys, because she's 26 and they're like 17.
Yeah.
So she's like 9 years older than they are. So, you know, at 9, you remember people being born. Certainly you remember them as babies.
And you at least know she's the wisdom of this village now. Taking care of these families is her job and their health. She knows everyone.
Right.
Everyone knows everyone.
Right.
Anyway.
And she's like the doctor, right? She knows all the secrets about their bumps and bruises and all the previous wisdom, I'm sure, taught her everything she knew.
Questionable heritage.
You know, the fact that Tam came back from...
Right. He did come back with a redheaded wife, but a redheaded wife from who knows where. There's definitely a question there.
Right. And the child was definitely born outside the two rivers. Even though I think Nynaeve thinks it was Carrie Althor's child.
Yeah, I don't think anyone really questions that at this point.
Right. But
except Moiraine.
Yeah. But she knows.
Maybe not even her. It doesn't even really matter. But would she know that Rand's mother is a dead maiden of the spear? Or just...
No, but she would know...
Or even an Aiel? She would just know that the baby was born around there at that time. This person could look like anything.
Right, born on Dragon Mount. But you look at Rand and he clearly does not belong.
To be born on Dragon Mount on that day, and then to be the only red-haired, gray-eyed person that lives in the two rivers, who's like taller than everyone.
I mean, he is the spitting image of an Aiel.
Yeah.
So many characters comment on that.
In the next chapter, when Tom runs into him, it's the first thing he says to Rand. It's like, you're taller than an Aielman. Yeah. It's the first thing he says. And Rand's just like, well, I don't know if he's making fun of me or not, but whatever.
Right.
So he thinks Aielman is a slur at this point. Well, pretty much everyone thinks Aielman is a slur at this point.
Well, yeah. But he's being serious. He knows Aielman, and he's like, oh, you're like, tall. I mean, it's a bit of an expression, right? Like, beanpole or big as a horse or whatever. But
knowing what I know about Tom now, he's probably met Aielman at some point.
Oh, surely. I mean, he was around during the Aiel War.
And there's a couple of lines I noticed that's, I think, also in the Gleeman chapter, not in this one, where Rand mentions, he's like in his own head, mentions that he's the only person in the village that doesn't have brown eyes. Got made fun of it as a kid all the time until, I don't know, he punched one of the Cogners in the face or something.
Yeah, punched him right in the nose.
And then nobody made fun of him anymore. But he's the only person with blue eyes.
Right. And he's got a reach like Abraham Lincoln.
Right.
Let's talk about the fact that, like, in swordplay, Rand's pretty good. He also has an incredible reach, which gives him a huge advantage.
Yeah. He's got to be 6 feet tall. He's as tall as Lan, right?
Rand?
Yeah.
He's taller. I bet he's like 6'5", 6'8".
Really? That big?
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Very few other characters are that tall. There's not even very many Aielmen who are as tall as he is.
Really?
Yeah.
And we know that Perrin and Matt are relatively short, or at least average. Like, I figure between
they're taller than average, but shorter than Rand. Is my.
You can only guess based on other people's heights. And I'm pretty sure there's no, like, at no point is anyone like, this is how tall.
No, there's no like.
You can only approximate. Yeah.
I'm Googling.
Matt is
5'11", Matt is 5'11". Perrin is 6'2" or 6'3".
Oh, really? I always assumed Perrin was like 5'10".
No.
Just like a thick, stocky dude.
No, you're way too short on these guys. They're all super tall.
And Rand is significantly... I mean,
Yeah.
I know he's significantly taller than Perrin.
6'5" to 6'6".
That's
is what the
huge.
internet says. Yeah, he's gigantic. He's like Comey style big.
Yeah, that's the norm. You don't often meet anyone that big.
No, he is. I mean, everyone remarks on the fact that he's so tall. And by the way, I think in a lot of ways, height, especially among the male channelers, is related to power.
Interesting theory.
Keep track of it as we read the series.
All right.
You'll see that they're very like Demon Dread, whatever. Damodred.
Yeah, I don't...
Sorry about the pronunciation, folks.
There is no correct, probably.
No, there is no. One of the reasons he was jealous was because he was like half an inch shorter or something like that. Like that's why he was always jealous of Lewis.
Oh, really?
Theron. Yeah, and in the same sentence, just a little bit less powerful.
Oh, yeah.
Right, that like he's just a little bit shorter and just a little bit less powerful, and like those two things are tied together very closely.
Yeah, I wonder if it's true for the others.
I think it is.
Jesus, 6'5", 6'6". That's enormous. That's like when it starts to get uncomfortable for people. Like, you gotta duck through doorways sometimes. You gotta look out for ceiling fans.
Yeah.
I had a good buddy growing up that was 6'9", and he literally had to look out for ceiling fans. Literally. Oh, yeah. In some people's houses.
Yeah, I know. I've actually, this guy I work with right now who's in the high sixes, and yeah, I watch him duck through doorways.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to suck to be way outside the norm.
Or really, really short.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just feel sort of bad for Frances when I'm like, oh yeah, pour yourself a glass of wine, and like her like everything is just out of her. She has to drag a chair into my kitchen to get my glasses. Like, oh, I'm sorry. Oh yeah, we need to talk about the Raven.
Well, you've got better theories on this one than I do. I want to hear you talk about this one.
Oh, but let me throw this out there before we move on. I'm looking at the description when Matt and Rand first ran into Moiraine. Then the book goes on to say, she smiled, and Rand found himself wondering if there was anything he might do for her, something that would give him an excuse to stay near her. He knew she was smiling at all of them, but it seemed meant for him alone. And I thought that might also be part of an example of a bit of the light compulsion. Like you said, a lot of Wilders learn as a trick as little girls, and I think we see a major character, or not a major character, but a major B character later. You try to use that specifically, this trick where you just it just lightens someone. They just like you. That's what the compulsion is, essentially. You just sort of touch their mind a little, and they just want to do what you want.
Are you talking about Liandrin or Varen?
I think Liandrin.
Yes.
Because she tries to use it on one of the Forsaken later. And
oh, yeah, Mogedion, I think.
Yeah.
Who's really good at the compulsion and turns it right back on her and is like, yeah, nice try. You want to see what it's really like?
Toy on me.
Yeah.
This is like in the first couple of pages of chapter 2. Matt and Rand leave the inn after packing all the barrels into the basement. And then I underlined here, the hair stirred on the back of his neck. This is Rand here. He was being watched again. It was far from the feeling the hooded rider had given him, but neither was it pleasant, especially so soon after that encounter. Then for a couple of paragraphs, he's like looking around and no one's looking at him. He's like, oh, that was weird. And then he notices a raven sitting on the top of the inn watching him and Matt walk away. And then I underlined, and suddenly anger flickered in him, hot and sharp. Filthy carrion eater, he muttered. I'm tired of being stared at, Matt growled. And Rand realized his friend had stepped up beside him and was frowning at the raven too. They exchanged a glance. Then as one, their hands darted for rocks. The stones flew true, and the raven stepped aside, and the stones whistled through the space where it had been.
The Dark One's looking at you. I mean, I think that's what the takeaway there is, that they felt the evil gaze of the Dark One. Or perhaps Ishmael looking through the raven?
Yeah, maybe. And Seth and I have been talking about this scene a bunch. You know, there's no way to really know, but I suspect that Rand should be able at this point to sense the Dark One's presence, which he should be able to sense that in the Raven if it's being inhabited by a Forsaken or...
Yeah, I'm not sure, because it's a tough... I'm not sure that the true power is going to give him that sensitivity until he starts channeling, and I don't think he's channeling at this point. Not to mention, Matt has the same reaction that he does, and Matt is not a channeler. And by the way, I think we just took opposite points of our original argument, or our original discussion. I think originally I was saying that it was something he sensed because he was a channeler, and you were saying, oh no, it's just the Eye of the Dark One.
Right, but he I mean, it's possible that he's channeled, but I don't think so. I feel like we would have heard of it if he had channeled already.
And we see so many side effects of channeling, the sickness that he gets later when he has channeled.
He likely would have gotten very sick.
Very sick. And as far as I can tell, there's no reference, he would have mentioned himself being sick, and there's no sort of crazy behavior that we see later on after his channeling.
Yeah, and we don't see Matt have any particular ability to sense the shadow later in the books, even when his powers are really developed.
No. I think this is just, you feel someone staring at you, possibly the dark, the eyes of the Dark One or a raven really kind of acting weird. Like,
no. I might be wrong, but I think that most of the chapters that are related to Thought have the raven.
The symbols?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Memory and Thought are the names of Odin's two ravens.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So
I thought you were just pointing that out.
No. So if you look into the legends of Odin, his two ravens are Memory and Thought, which is the inscription on the Aes Sedai. Yeah, which are the chapter headers.
I just started thumbing through the book really quick to see if I could find an example, and chapter 42 of Eye of the World has the two raven symbols underneath the chapter heading, and the chapter is called Remembrance of Dreams. Mm-hmm. He's totally doing that on purpose.
Oh yeah. Well, and of course, Matt. It's another reference to Matt as Odin. Well, it's because it also represents shadow. You have the shadow. The ravens is shadow. The ravens is a representative of the Shanchan, and the ravens as part of Matt's. Because you have on his ring, you've got the ravens and the fox, and on the Aes Sedai, you say Memory and Thought, which is a reference to the ravens of legend.
The fox that makes the ravens fly.
Yep.
He's even hung from a tree, for Christ's sakes. I mean, it's just too obvious.
Oh yeah. So
right. So they throw the two stones. The bird gracefully steps aside and continues to watch them.
Might actually be just a normal raven behavior.
Yeah, no, they do that. I was walking down the street the other day, and one just took two steps aside, and I was like I kind of have to get out of its way. It didn't even really try that hard.
They don't give a crap. They're like, yeah, you move. But I think the point of what they're saying in the story is that it's unnatural behavior for a raven. It is weird. Yeah.
I mean, especially if you're throwing stuff at it. Here, I'll read the rest of this. I have some of this underlined. Rand stared at the bird in consternation. Did you ever see a raven do that? He asked quietly. Matt shook his head without looking away from the raven. Never. Nor any other bird either. A vile bird, came a woman's voice from behind them. Melodious despite its distaste. To be mistrusted in the best of times. And that's our entrance, Moiraine.
Love her. So I have to read one more quote from her. Because she's talking to Rand. And I think this quote is directly for him, even though she doesn't really say it to him. I'm not sure what Rand asks right before this, but he asks a question, and she replies, "As the wheel of time turns," Moiraine said, half to herself, with a distant look in her eyes. Places wear many names. Men wear many names. Many faces, different faces, but always the same man. Yet no one knows the great pattern the wheel weaves, or even the pattern of an age. We can only watch and study and hope. So that's her quote. And I think she's saying a couple of things there. One, she's saying, men wear many names, many faces. She's looking at Rand and saying, you're the dragon reborn with a different name and a different face.
Mm-hmm. I see the conversation you're looking at. And what Rand asks is, he says, Lady, I mean Moiraine, why have you come to Emond's Field? Her expression was unchanged. I'll skip through this. And she says, I'm sorry. It's just that no one comes to the Two Rivers except the merchants and peddlers when the snow isn't too deep. Almost no one. Certainly no one like you. And he goes on. And then she gives him the story about getting stories or looking for stories. And then Rand says, I mean, what could have happened here? And then she says this. Mm-hmm. And he has no idea what she's talking about. But she's clearly kind of musing to herself at this point. She's talking about a lot of different things at the same time.
Right.
You're right. This is a cool quote.
This is a really cool quote. I think there's so much. Every little bit, is an insight to what she's doing and what she thinks. Places wear many names. Men wear many names. They're talking about history, but she's also talking about the turning of the wheel and
rebirth.
And no one can know the great pattern or even the pattern of an age. Like, you can't see all of what's going on, and I think that's constantly a theme in the book, that no one character knows what's happening in the whole story ever.
She's like, we can only study and watch and hope, or something like that.
Yeah, we can only watch and study and hope. And I think she's just saying, I'm looking for the Dragon Reborn and hoping that I can find him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's very much what she's saying here. This is what I have been doing.
Totally. I'm looking and studying and hoping and trying to find this Dragon Reborn because we need to be saved.
Yeah. Which is why I just compelled you to listen to what the fuck I say.
Exactly.
Because now I have to figure out how to pry you out of the maws of this backwater village.
I go back and I read this stuff. The first time reading through, I had no idea. But there's so much in every single sentence.
I think a lot of it is just carried by the depth of the characters.
True.
Especially all we know about Moiraine now, having read The New Spring.
Right.
Which we'll do eventually. But we don't really know when.
I want to do that in published order. So,
okay.
Like, I think it's like after 10 or something like that. Maybe after, I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, it came out pretty late.
Yeah. So whenever it came out in the published order, that's when I'd like to do it.
Yeah, I think it'll probably be a little bit. It's not as good. It wouldn't be very good as a standalone book.
No.
You know what I mean?
No, but it's a great supplement to the.
Once you have a bunch of context and you read that, it kind of opens up some more doors.
So yeah, at the current rate we're going, in about 7 years, we'll have a chance to talk about New Spring. So yeah.
And then Fane shows up and chapter. He literally shows up and it's chapter 3, The Peddler.
The last quote there is, "It's going to be the best Beltane ever." Woo! You have no idea.
Oh yeah, I guess you could call those fireworks.
So yeah, we're coming back with The Peddler.
All right, cool.
All right, break?
Yeah. We just sat at Seth's kitchen table and drank a beer and stared at the microphones for an hour.
Yeah, it's been like 2. But,
so it's whatever.
Right. That's what it takes. In fairness, I had to come home and take care of the dog and eat some dinner, and I was running a little behind today.
Yeah, what else would I be doing on a Thursday night? Seriously, though.
I don't know. What else would you be doing?
Sitting in a pub, getting drunk, probably.
Oh, well, I'd rather you sit at my kitchen table and get drunk. Speaking of which, you want to grab another beer?
It's cheaper here. Well, I just opened this big, got one of those 1.5 Rainier cans.
Oh, excellent. I'm going to grab another amber ale.
Should we just start promoting beers and see if anyone gets back to us?
Tonight, I am drinking New Belgium Flat Tire Amber Ale. Quite tasty.
Amber? Why amber?
Because right in the beginning, guess who brews up a nice brown ale?
Amber Ale, that's right. Master Elvire.
Brewer extraordinaire. Just
this afternoon, I read from beginning of chapter 2 to like halfway through chapter 4. I'm not sure exactly. I don't think we have any plan as far as how far we're going to go today. Now that we're just breaking into doing the chapters in the main series, we've got to kind of try to flesh out like how many pages we want to do in one. I'm sure it'll vary, but
right. We certainly spent long enough on chapter 1.
Yeah, right.
We had plenty to talk about there. So, for now, I think we should take it chapter by chapter, and I think there'll be some chapters that we perhaps take a little bit faster, and some chapters we take a little bit slower.
I think it goes strangers. Oh, then the peddler, then the gleeman. So the peddler is chapter 3, and the gleeman is chapter 4.
I have a lot to say about the peddler.
Oh man, I know. I think we've already threatened, or I've already threatened several times to do a whole episode just on the peddler, Patton Fane.
Fane. I really love him as an antithesis to Matt, but I don't think he's used often enough. But his use is subtle in some places.
Could definitely have been used more. I would like to know more. That's interesting as an antithesis to Matt. I never really thought of him that way, but he is sort of they are sort of an Odin Loki dichotomy.
I pair a lot of characters, good and evil, in my head. I pair Perrin with the Slayer.
Oh yeah, and then Rand and Ishmael, Moiraine and Lanfear,
Nynaeve and Moghedien.
Yeah, geez, this is too easy. I never looked at it this way before, but everybody does sort of have a
mirror dark friend, yeah, or a mirror forsaken. Not entirely, but there's definitely
these big characters do. I wonder how far we could take that. What about like Lan or I don't know. I mean, Lan's like attached to Moiraine through almost the whole series.
Well, I think of Lan and Demandred. He kills him.
True. Man, that's a claim to fame.
I didn't say I came here to win. I came here to kill you.
He's so badass.
He's so badass.
And he uses that like Laconian style speech. He's just like Clint Eastwood from Middle Earth, essentially, is what Lan is.
I like that. Yeah, and we get to meet him here, which is awesome. Don't we? Or no, maybe we don't. I mean, we hear about him, but I don't think he shows up in the second chapter here.
I'm not sure.
Because we see Moiraine and she talks to them, but Lan is still not with her. Which is
they see him, but he doesn't talk to them.
Right.
He just eyeballs them awkwardly and walks away.
Oh, do you know cats in the Two Rivers have an extra toe?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, it's funny. Which is that there are places in the real world where that happens.
Right, that's not uncommon.
I thought that was totally like made up fantasy stuff. The first couple of times I read this, I heard that there are cats that actually have the extra toe. I like flipped my. They're
like considered healthy and stuff. Yeah. They just have
just a
24 toes.
Polydactyl, I think, is the word for it.
Yeah,
like an extra finger or extra toe. Pterodactyls.
3 toes.
Well, aren't those the flying dinosaurs?
Yeah.
Pterodactyls.
Maybe they have like 3 toes, like a
bat.
Yeah,
totally. That would make sense.
Terra?
Terra? Yeah. Earth? Well, I don't know.
Whatever. This podcast is not about dinosaurs.
8-year-olds, please, listening to this, tell us about the dinosaurs.